I am so happy to be here today, and I want to tell you what I was going to talk about as of Sunday. This is what I was going to talk about, but I'm not going to talk about it. So I'm going to tell you in 30 seconds, and then we're going to go what I'm actually going to talk about. Number one, I was going to tell you that if you want to make lots and lots of friends here today, smile. Smile at everyone that you possibly can. It's very interesting. Dr. Jim Kim, when he took over as president of the World Bank, their mission is to eradicate extreme poverty. He goes to Alan Mulally, the former CEO of Ford, and says, I need advice. And Alan Mulally, who's worked with hundreds of thousands of people, millions of stakeholders, one of the most important CEOs of our time, says to him, you need to smile more. When you're in your position, your face isn't yours anymore. So smile at people today. The second thing I want to encourage you to do is to call people by name whenever possible. We know the story of Atul Gawande. When people said their names in the operating room, complications and deaths went down by 35%. When you call people by name, you activate them. So call them by name. You might get it wrong. I called Shanna. Shauna. It's okay. Try your best. And the third thing is to be willing to, or give each other permission to speed friendship. There's so many people you want to meet. It's okay to talk to people for just 3 minutes and say, okay, our time's up, we need to move on, let me have your business card, I'll stay in touch with you. So give each other that permission and don't feel like the other person's being rude when you move. Okay, that's what I was going to talk about. Now I'm going to tell you what I'm really going to talk about, and it's all because of Chris Rice. Where are you? Raise your hand. Thank you, Chris. If you like what I say, thank him. If you don't like what I say, blame me. All right. Yesterday, Chris said to me, Whitney, you talk a lot about personal disruption, and that's what I want you to talk about. But I want you to talk about the emotional aspect of this. I want you to talk about the emotional aspect. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to tell you a few stories that I haven't told before, and I hope that they're helpful. First, a recap. Disruptive innovation, silly little thing that eventually takes over the world. We've just heard Walt Mossberg talk a little bit about that. Let me give you a few. Telephone took over the telegraph. Electricity, or the light bulb, took over the gas lamp, and the car took over the horse and buggy. More recently, Toyota disrupted General Motors. Netflix, top 6, not top 5, according to Walt, disrupted Blockbuster, and Airbnb is disrupting hotels. Disruptive innovation follows a pattern. Disruptors secure a foothold at the low end of the market. Initially, their position is weak. Products are inferior. Think about Toyota in the 60s. At that point in time, General Motors could have crushed them like a cockroach, but they didn't. Market leaders rarely bother. It's just a silly little thing, silly little Corolla. Let's go after bigger, faster, better Cadillac. Bad news or the good, depending on your point of view, is that once a disruptor gains a foothold, it too is motivated by bigger, faster, better Lexus, and so it goes. Personal disruption. It's how you take these ideas and make them meaningful to you. You start at the bottom of the ladder, climb to the top, and then jump to the bottom of a new ladder. Like the children's game, Chutes and Ladders. Lady Gaga, she's a master of personal disruption. In 2008, she went straight to the top of the charts, and what does she do for an encore? She jumps to the bottom of a new ladder. She collaborates with Tony Bennett on a jazz album. She does a Sound of Music tribute. Lady Gaga, Sound of Music, at the Oscars. She produces a country album. But imagine what people were saying, what they were thinking, what her manager was thinking when she decided to produce a country album. They thought she had lost her mind. And that's what happens when you disrupt yourself. People think you've lost your mind. They don't understand that you've chosen to become a silly little thing so that you can again take over the world. The other thing that they don't understand, that you don't understand, that I don't understand, is that change is not linear. When we play this high stakes game of change, we think that we're gonna be able to flip the switch, then the light will go on, you'll do X and Y will happen, but it doesn't work that way. You're gonna work hard for days, weeks, months, and years. Little will happen, and you'll wonder, did I lose my mind? At our Disruptive Innovation Fund, we use the S-curve that was popularized by E.M. Rogers in 1962, so 50 years ago. He wrote about it in The Diffusion of Innovations to help us understand how quickly an innovation will be adopted. It also helps us understand and deal with this unpredictability. At the outset, growth is slow. Once a tipping point is reached, you enter hypergrowth. At 90% or saturation, the growth tapers off. As we were applying the S-curve for investing, I had this insight that it's not products and services and companies and countries that disrupt. It's the individual. The fundamental unit of disruption is the individual. Is it my hair? What is it? Move this down. Thank you. Thank you. Is that better? Okay. Microphones always disrupt me. Okay, so fundamental unit of disruption is the individual. The other aha I had was that the S-curve can also help us understand the psychology of disruption. When you start something new, when you start a new role, when you start a new job, when you start anything, it's an opportunity to disrupt. The S-curve tells you, initially, progress will seem non-existent, and this helps you avoid discouragement. As you put in the days and weeks and months of practice, you will accelerate into competence. And with this comes confidence. As you approach mastery, things will be easy, but because you're no longer enjoying the feel-good effects of learning, you can get bored. And so if you don't jump at this point, you've got this innovator's dilemma, because if you jump or don't jump, it's scary. If you innovate or don't innovate, it's scary. But if you don't jump, your plateau becomes a precipice. So I want to share 4 quick examples of the personal disruption for me, how I felt that underbelly of disruption. First one is happening right now. It's real time. In October, I'm speaking at the World of Business Ideas in Mexico City. There are going to be thousands of people there. The key keynote is Michael Phelps. I'm so excited. I'm going on stage, but guess what? A few months ago, I interviewed someone for my podcast. He dared me to give the speech in Spanish. Well, I do speak Spanish. I served a mission in Uruguay for 1.5 years, so I speak Spanish, but I have never, ever given a speech in Spanish. This is the easy kind of disruption. I'm gonna jump to a new curve, it feels good, I'm in control. That feels kind of fun, Chris, and we all need to do a little bit of that. Now I'm gonna give you a couple more that aren't so easy and aren't so fun. A few years ago, we invested in a business. It was a good idea. It was called Organized Magazine. Great idea, in fact. It didn't work, but we poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into this business. Turns out later, we were defrauded. We lost a lot of money. Now, that's not the lesson. I was pushed off a curve. This time I didn't choose to become a silly little thing. I was the silly little thing. But the lesson here was I didn't follow my own advice. Number 4, battle entitlement. My husband didn't want to make this investment. He advised against it. But you know what? The more successful you are, the more you think you deserve your success. And so here I am climbing up the curve, lots of revenue, margins expanding. I'm going to make the investment. So the lesson I learned was that I need to listen to my husband. And the lesson he learned, and were he here, he would agree, that he needs to speak up. He needs to say, not a good idea. No, really not a good idea. As you're going along in life, sometimes you're going to get pushed. You're going to become a silly little thing, but it's still an opportunity to grow. Third example, When I was working on Wall Street as an equity analyst, I was in investment banking. I was at the top of the curve. I was feeling very comfortable. There was a takeover at the bank, as often happens on Wall Street. My boss gets fired, and I'm moved into equity research. Actually, I'm shoved into equity research, and if anybody knows about Wall Street, that is like going from flying a fighter jet to a C-130. My ego took a huge hit. But guess what? Going into equity research was a career maker for me. I was much better as an equity analyst than I ever was as a banker. And you know what else happened? When I first started, I had a colleague say to me, "You're a shrinking violet. You don't have an opinion. You don't know how to voice your opinion. You don't know how to say, this is what I think and here's why." And equity research taught me that. Now I know how to say, this is what I think. This is what I think is going to happen. And I stand by what I said. Now, a quick note on being fired, because I've been fired too. When you get fired, it's easy to say, but it was politics. It was politics. It just means that you're playing where other people are playing, and they're bigger than you are, and it's really hard to walk through the door of your market opportunity when there is a bouncer standing at the door. So I want you to consider this. By the way, 10 to 15% of people lose their jobs every year, so a lot of you are going to lose a job at some point in your life. So consider this. If you've been fired, maybe it was time for you to jump to a new S-curve, and you knew it, but you wouldn't do it. So the universe, it gave you a nudge. Fourth story. Never shared this one before, so we'll see how it goes. When I was in college, I met this young man, very nice young boy. He was a boy, I was a girl. I liked him, and I decided I wanted to marry him. My mom didn't like him. She had no good reason not to like him, except that my parents had divorced. I was the oldest, I was the emotional parent, and I think she instinctively knew that if I married him, I would go away just a little bit. So here I was at the top of the curve, my way of life, my way of doing things, and I'm getting ready to jump to the bottom of the new curve to marry this young boy. Do you know what I did? I fought it. I sabotaged it. Our courtship was miserable. Our first 2 years of marriage were miserable for my husband. In fact, at one point it was so awful, but for the grace of God, he would not have married me. Here's what I want to say to you. Sometimes disruption is easy and fun, like a speech. Sometimes you get pushed off and it's an opportunity to grow. Sometimes you want to disrupt yourself. You know you need to disrupt yourself. And yet you are going to fight it with everything you have. You are going to sabotage it. Don't do that. Don't do it. I will tell you today, I just had my 30-year anniversary. Marrying my husband was the best S-curve I have ever jumped to, and will probably be the best decision I've ever made in my life. And it was one of the scariest, and it was one of the loneliest. When you disrupt yourself, you leave your comfortable perch doing things the way you've always done. You leave who you were to become who you will be. You disrupt the current iteration of you to become the real you. But it's scary and lonely. So if you're scared and if you're lonely, know that you are on the right path to disruption. One final thought, quote I want to share with you. It's from Anne Lamott. She says, if we stay where we are, where we're stuck, where we're comfortable and safe, we die there. We become like mushrooms living in the dark with poop up to our chins. If you want to know only what you already know, you're dying. You're saying, leave me alone. I don't mind this little rat hole. It's warm and dry. Really, it's fine. When nothing can get in, that's death. When oxygen can't find a way in, you die. But new is scary. New can be disappointing and confusing. We had this all figured out, and now we don't. New is life. People, get out of the poop. Be willing to be a silly little thing so that you can take over your world. Thank you.